The Ichthyosaur queen cut through the water. The grandeur of her streamlined body filled the Han River as confused incarnations immediately moved away. Shit! What is this? There was a feeling of solemnity as I faced her. I was facing the ruler of a species. I once again felt how great Shin Yu-sung and Li Gilyong were. Come down. The queen's whiskers touched the water at my words. Once again, it was unreasonable to have the same effect, even with the same skill. It was so much when I used Lycaon's Way of the Wind. I approached her and climbed up using the scales. The body of the queen shook like she was rejecting my touch. This was the limit for me. Honestly, it felt like my frontal lobe was burning from the connection with the queen. I left the incarnations hunting me behind and opened my mouth. Let's go. Then my struggle with the queen began. As if she was playing with me, the queen swam through the water regardless of my breathing. I gasped for air, looking like a wet mouse. The surrounding ichthyosaurs poured towards me like they were amused. The constellation, Prison of the Golden Headband, is laughing at you. Control was a mess, but the queen was moving in the direction I wanted. It was southwest of Yongsan-gu. It was Nodulsum, one of the few islands in Han River. If I remembered correctly, this island was the place with the most potential for the disaster of floods to hatch. The fifth disaster hatched on an artificial island in Han River. Ways of Survival was a novel where the year wasn't specified. Therefore, I didn't know exactly what year Ways of Survival was based on. I thought it was close to the year I lived in, but it had been serialized for 10 years, and the technological development wasn't right. There was little mention of modern devices in Ways of Survival, and sometimes there was no fixed geographical names used. This situation was an example. An artificial island in Han River. Where the hell is it? Nonetheless, I was able to determine that it was Nodulsum due to the description and size of the meteorite. My thoughts were interrupted by the queen's sudden stop. I rolled down and was thrown onto the island. Queen Mirbad glanced at me before disappearing into Han River. She was a heartless jerk. The Isuzu skill bookmark has been turned off. The world turned around as I coughed out river water. I raised my head and the landscape of the island spread out in front of me. I'd never been here before, but something felt strange. The trees on the island looked like they were before the world was ruined. The ichthyosaurs disappeared and the incarnations were pairing across the river. I could see some of the incarnations flying in the sky. I hid behind a tree and held my breath as I watched them. Where is he? Didn't he obviously come through here? I didn't think there'd be so many people who learnt flight maneuvers. These jerks weren't regressors. Why did they adapt so fast? Many of them landed on the island and looked around. Hyung, let's look around. I don't have any confidence facing him alone. I agree. Do you see all those stars above his head? He's a monster. Hero-like traits aren't necessary when dealing with a monster. Will he be as strong as the king in the west? There's a conversation discussing how to kill someone. I thought it was too shameful to compare me to Yu Zhonguk. I wanted to hide until the end of the time limit, but someone showed up from the forest on the island. Hatashi should be careful. Get off this island if you know what's good for you. It was a strong voice. The girl dressed in a black hoodie over a uniform walked towards the men. Who are you? A young person who's unafraid. My arm! Her sword moved through the air, and the men who had their arms cut off screamed. One of the relatively younger incarnations shouted, It's her! The Duke of Loyalty and Warfare! What? Why is that girl here? Run! Run away! The incarnations hurriedly used flight maneuvers, but their talent wasn't as high as I thought. A few of them were slightly strong. However, the Duke of Loyalty and Warfare wouldn't make anyone his incarnation, even if they were a descendant of his friend. The girl pointed her sharp blade at me. Hatashi, are you going to come out? Why are you hiding when you have the target mark on you? That reminded me. I still had the arrow above my head. I sighed and left the forest with both hands raised. Are you going to kill me? I'd like to, but Master would be sad. The long-haired girl, Li Jihye, put away her sword with a laugh. Her strength had increased in the 10 days we hadn't met. Li Jihye saw my injured arm and said to me, How have you been? I don't think you've been well. And why ask? I thought you returned to Depong High School. Why are you here? Master picked me up a few days ago. I don't know how he found me. Yu Zhonguk? I knew Li Jihye was a key member of Yu Zhonguk's party, but to go there and find her? I looked at her physical body stats using calm observation. The total value was roughly over 160. Her strength and physique seemed slightly lower, but she had reached the limit on her stats for the 5th scenario. Moreover, Demon Slayer and sword training had improved further. It seemed that all characters in Wasted Survival grew faster when they weren't around me. Do they all have a mental block because of me? What about Ajishi's party? Have you met Hiwon and me? The others are waiting in Yongsan-gu. I haven't met Hiwon-shi yet. Too bad. She wanted to see you. Come to think of it, Jung Hee-won and Lee Jie were in similar positions. I looked around carefully and asked, "Did you come with Yu Jong-ok?" Why does Ajishi know everything? At this moment, I heard a sound from the edge of the island. Incarnations who had been fighting the ichthyosaurs finished and approached the island. Some came on boats, some swam, and others used special skills. They looked like a group of tourists. I found him! There he is! And I was the tour product. Lee Jie became angry when she saw the incarnations. Why did you drag that bunch of trash here? I brought them to catch the disaster. Some people were preparing themselves for the disaster, but not everyone. Those who didn't belong to any group were hiding all over Seoul, waiting for someone to clear the main scenario. Then they would take action on the resulting power loss. The last disaster couldn't be broken by such a flimsy determination. If everyone didn't fight together. Why did you do that? There's no point. Huh? There won't be a disaster. Master taking care of it. Maya stared at Lee Jie with disbelief. The last disaster won't be dangerous at all. Instead, useless people can't enter the island. They're entering. Lee Jie once again pulled out her sword. Lee Jie wasn't the only one controlling an entrance to the island. A large person waved towards an incoming ship. Everyone, you aren't allowed inside here. This is a danger zone. What? Who are you? Lieutenant of the 6502 unit. What nonsense is this? A flying blade was caught in the man's hand, and he stated, It is dangerous to resist the authorities. You... The lieutenant wore a suit reminiscent of a giant bear and had a dirty beard. I will take you to a safe place. The lieutenant lifted the man with one hand and threw him to the other side of the Han River. The man flew at great speeds until he finally landed on the other side. The lieutenant asked, Is there anyone who needs guidance? Crazy! A monster! The lieutenant facing the incarnations had tired eyes, like a mountain had piled up on his shoulders. It was a face that looked terribly wary. It's so hard. I think I'm gonna die. Dr. Shi, where are you? Lee Hyungsung-shi? At that moment, Lee Hyungsung looked at me. His expression was like he found an oasis in the middle of a desert. Doksha? Doksha-shi? Lee Hyungsung came towards me. I instinctively took a step back. Doksha-shi! It's me, Lee Hyungsung! I was about to say something when another group of incarnations disembarked. There he is! Catch him! Lee Hyungsung's expression distorted. I told you it is a danger zone! He turned around and slammed his fist into the ground. The character, Lee Hyungsung, has used the stigma, Great Mountain Smash level 5. The entire island shook as the edges exploded. I was captivated by the second scene of incarnations flying. That Yu Jong-ok bastard. How did he raise a person? I asked the delighted-looking Hyungsung, Where's Yu Jong-ok? Lee Hyungsung's expression became slightly sad. Oh, he's in the middle of the island. I'll be right back. Then we'll talk. I ignored Lee Hyungsung's desperate gaze and ran to the center of the island. There were many things I wanted to ask Lee Hyungsung, but now wasn't the time. I had to check something quickly. How long did I walk through the forest? I finally saw a huge meteorite stuck in the center of the forest. The size of the meteorite was overwhelming compared to the other ones. The red ore on the surface implied a sure destruction. There was a woman standing in front of the meteorite. My expression changed at the sight of Lee Solhwa when the person I was looking for emerged from the rear. Yu Jong-ok. Yu Jong-ok stood there calmly, exuding a steady presence. I asked him, What are you doing right now? You must know because you have future sight. I was speechless at the calm answer. The yellow meteorite stuck in the middle of the huge disaster meteorite. I immediately noticed why Yu Jong-ok wanted to come here quickly. Are you feeding the guide meteorite to the disaster? The gods will only interfere later. It's better to kill them while we can handle them. Once again, my ominous feelings were always right. This bastard was trying to hack the disaster early. He was Lee Soho's lover for a reason. No, why? Putting aside the guide, why are you trying to wake up the disaster early? Have you finally gone crazy? There was a slight disappointment in Yu Zhong's eyes as he replied. You don't seem to know a lot this time. What? This disaster was a colleague in my past life. Who didn't know this? Yu Zhong declared with an arrogant expression. That's why this disaster is safe. Safe? Several thoughts passed through my head. Yeah, sometimes he was too nice. The disaster of floods has hatched. I'd forgotten for a while because I received his help several times. This guy in front of me was someone who barely took a step towards the end after dying over 100 times.